Yeah. So, I'm really happy, Jen, that you've agreed to do this interview. And I know that you're working in California. I've been to the clearing center. So, it's really, you do great work, and you also do work on grief specifically. And I want to talk about that later.
Mm.
But you're a senior trainer, you've got lots of experience. So tell me, why do you love these programs?
Oh, well, yes. So I'm a level 4 senior trainer with Transformational Breath Foundation, and I've been teaching since two about 2013, I believe. Been in the breath work since 2008, so been in it for a while. And your question was, why do I love these trainings? Well, I'll tell you first and foremost, it's the reason that I am on this planet right now. I found the breath work, I found transformational breath specifically when I was suicidal and back in 2008. And I had been doing everything outside of myself to try to get relief. Nothing was working. And I went to a workshop, and I came out of out of that session, and I said, this is going to save my life. Like, hands down, this is going to save my life. And I just went right into the 6-day program. And I was blown away when I went to the 6-day, what we call essentials course now. And my what happened for me after that week of breath work, at the very end, we look at ourselves in the mirror, what we call a mirror session. And that was the first time in my life that I saw who I was. I saw love. I saw God for me inside of myself. And I had been a worship leader at a mega Christian church for 15 years. And this was my first experience truly internally with touching presence, the essence of oneness and love within me. And what changed my life was that moment, because then we got up and we got into our circle, and there were people there from all over the world. Just like Paul, you're in France, I'm in California. And there were people there from all over the world. And I saw that love in absolutely every soul, every person's eyes. And I said, why do people not know this? Why is everybody striving and trying to be skinny or get the perfect job or get the perfect guy? And that's exhausting. And I'm like, when the whole of the unified field, love is right here. It's who we are, period. And from that on, my whole life changed, because I said, I want to teach people this, and not just teach the breath work, but teach people, show people how to find that love within themselves. And so, of course, I go marching on, okay, I'm going to help people love themselves, uh, very optimistic. And I realize there's just too much clutter, right? We can't see the forest through the trees because there's too much junk, too much trauma, too much life experience that has kind of broken us all down. And so I went ahead anyway, but I realized the depth and the breadth that it takes to help someone navigate that forest, right? Navigate those trees one by one. And so when you ask your question, what do I love about these trainings? The depth, the professionalism that I was held with when I went through, the safety and security, and the ability of the facilitators and the trainers to hold me, not just hold me physically, but hold the space for massive transformation, massive work into those limiting beliefs. And I had been in talk therapy for my whole life. I had been raised in an alcoholic home, very dysfunctional, which is why I was suicidal at age 38. And I was just safe. I felt safe to do that work. And so when I went ahead with the trainings myself to become a trainer, and then therefore a senior trainer, and even teach the trainings, I so appreciated the professionalism, the depth, the breadth, the time, the time that it takes to work through your own stuff, to have the consciousness of a facilitator that someone else can feel safe with.
Mm,
And that's what I love about about transformational breath trainings, and Judith Kravitz in particular, because she's very professional. She's very set in her ways as far as this is what I expect of people who are going to be going to work with people's emotions and traumas. And so when I graduated, I felt confident.
mm,
I felt confident in taking somebody through a breath session. I felt confident in taking a whole group of people into this level of transformation because I felt that I had the skills then, I had the training, and I had the emotional and mental growth needed to be able to hold that space. Now, mind you, we get our certification and then maybe we go out, and of course life is going to give us those opportunities to grow even more. But I felt that I had that foundation. And anybody who comes to my trainings and maybe they go, well, wow, you know, I could go to a weekend and get certified. I said, well, go right ahead. Go
mhm,
right ahead. And then try to do breath sessions and then try to do groups. Because
mm,
I will tell you, you can only take somebody as deep as you've gone yourself.
mm. And that
And
takes time.
and that takes time, and it takes work on our part to clear our own stuff. And and I hold this work with such reverence, Paul, that to me, this is God's work. This is Spirit's work. And I want to show up as best I possibly can, and feel that I'm doing this soul a due service
Mm,
by knowing what I'm doing. And so, but that's why I've loved the training. I mean, I followed Judith around. I was her organizer for 6 years. I just was like, I want to go wherever she's going because her program saved my life, and now I get people who follow me around. I don't want not that I want that, but it's fun because it's like I've done something to make a difference, and in a very honest, um authentic and professional way. And that's what I love. That's what I love about the trainings. And that if one decides to go through these trainings, even if they only decide to do it personally, they're gonna feel safe.
mm,
They're gonna know that the people working with them know what they're doing. And then if you decide to go through trainings to be a facilitator, then you're gonna know that I'm gonna get the best training that I can
mm.
to feel as confident as I can when I go out and bring this to the world. Because
Yeah,
we're faced with a lot of varying things when we're working with the breath, we're working with life force, we're working with invisible life force, and you want to know what you're doing, you want to at least have that foundation. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah, and as you say, to be as confident as possible because it's not going to be easy. There's going to be probably a lot of circumstances and personality issues that might surprise you. So it's good to have that base. And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think from what I understood of what you were saying is that you felt this confidence was given by the rigor of the work itself and
Mhm.
the necessary structure and the content, but also it was bit by bit that you were able to acquire knowledge and confidence. So it wasn't like nobody was pushing you to acquire that level of confidence. It became
No.
relatively organically. And so I'd like to sort of go back to this idea of safety. What do you
Mhm.
think produces safety? Because it's such an important issue in this line of work.
Mm. Gosh, there's a lot of components to that, but for me, first and foremost, it's the heart. It's
Mhm.
connecting heart to heart with your client and knowing that, um, I've done I've gone deep in this work, and therefore I'm available to hold that deep of a space for you. Because I know when I came into this work, um, I wanted to know that, I was suicidal. Can my facilitator go there with me and not give me the fluff, you know? But what creates safety is in the programs they teach you, how do I create a safe space that's clean, that's comfortable for people, um, that from the minute they come in, they know that you care about your space, therefore they must care about me, right?
Mm, mm,
You lessen any distractions because they want to know that I want to know that you're 100% present with me,
mm, mm,
not having your phone, right by you, check in, that I want you to be 100% present. And then connecting, sharing your own story and saying, I've gone to places. I just said it to some clients yesterday. If anger comes up, I've been there. I've gone to these places. So I want you to know that it's safe to allow anything that needs to come up and that the breath is brought up. It's okay to go there with me. And so to me, that creates that safe container and
mm,
allowing them to share their heart. First and foremost, allowing them to share their concerns, their worries, and make sure that you address all those. And, when you talk about the trainings, all of these things are in the trainings. So,
mm,
we're taught how to create a safe container. We're taught what helps people feel safe. From the foundations course to the advanced course, we could be talking about space and things like that. And then in the advanced course, we get talking about heart to heart connection. We talk about what helps create safety from a heart perspective with your client. Can you meet them there in your coaching? And so all of that breadth of information is what I loved and love teaching, because a lot of people don't realize that. Because if we don't learn that, we're bringing what we learned in life to the
mm,
table.
mm.
Right? Oh, I'm just gonna give you a whole bunch of intellectual responses. Oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh, well, we'll get you a new
Cheer up,
dog.
yeah.
Oh, well, then cheer up, think positive, stay busy. Right? And then if somebody says that to me, this is also in our grief stuff too. If somebody says that to me, what do? I'm gonna shut that heart down. I am
Yeah,
gonna shut that
yeah,
heart down so
yeah.
fast because I don't want to be given advice and I don't want to be told what to do. I want to know that my facilitator, my coach, is going to help bring these things out of me and knows that I already know what I need. And all of that is creating that safe container.
And I mean, you mentioned anger, but and obviously grief, and you're sort of become a specialist to a certain extent in grief, and you even created a
Yep.
weekend program, breathing into
Mhm.
grief. So maybe you can just say a few words about what brought you towards grief specifically, and what your experience has taught you about dealing with grief and dealing with helping people go through it.
Sure. So I found the breath work in 2008, and that was amazing. And as I mentioned, saved my life. And then my dad passed away in 2009. And I was introduced to a specific grief process that involves writing and communication. And the premise is unresolved grief. Grief is a heart issue. Everybody answers us intellectually, like I just mentioned, right? And that's the head versus the heart. And so what I learned is that grief is largely related to undelivered communications, all the things that our heart has never gotten to say, or it's said and it hasn't been heard because of all of those intellectual responses. So I learned that it's the head versus the heart. And when I when I dove into that process, I was amazed, absolutely amazed at what my heart needed to say. I When my dad passed, I couldn't listen to John Denver without being just a crying mess because that was our guy, that was our connection, John Denver music. And I was told, grief is the conflicting feelings that we feel after a loss. And my dad was the alcoholic, my dad was the abuser. And so I was kind of relieved he was dead. And then I missed him like all get out. And so when I came to that process, I realized I had a lot to say. And it's a writing piece, but then every homework assignment you do, you read it out loud because it needs to be witnessed. And after I completed that process on my dad, I could then listen to John Denver and it wouldn't lead me to debilitating pain. I could also remember the fond memories of my dad and not just the negative ones. And so it really healed and created a lot of balance, or what we call completion in that relationship. And I said, wow, okay, this was pretty amazing. My dad had died. But what I also learned was that grief is not, it's not just about death. It's about undelivered communication. So you can work this writing and communication piece on any relationship you have. And so I said, well, I'm going to do my mom because my mom was the big kahuna. And I could never be around her without feeling like I was 5. She would say, money doesn't grow on trees. And I'd be like, oh, I would react. And so I said, I'm going to try this process on my mom. And she was live and well at the time. And so I did. The end of that, we had to go away for a weekend outing for her birthday. And none of the things that she said triggered me anymore. None of them. And I was the one who she said, well, here, Jenny, she called me Jenny. Here, Jenny, you need to um, eat the rest of the salad because there's starving people in China, so we can't just throw it away. And I said, well, why not, Mom? Whereas before I would be like, oh, fine, I'll eat it, all the things we do with our parents, right? And I said, we can just throw this away, Mom, it'll be fine. So anyway, I was blown away. I was blown away at what was resolved as out of allowing my heart to say what it needs to say. And then I could have an adult relationship with my mom. And so I was like, I'm going to go to this training. This is amazing. And then what I realized is that the whole plan the whole time by spirit, in my opinion, was, well, grief lives in our lungs, right?
Mm,
You can look up Chinese medicine, and that's what the grief lives in the lung. So it's no accident that here I am already working with the breath. I want to help people find that love that they are, and we have to deal with that clutter. So we're clearing
mm,
that clutter inside. And at some point in time, we have to address what we need to say. We have to address where we are at this point in time with our pain, you know? And so the difference for me is it's taking responsibility for our part in a conscious relationship. And it's been very transformational to take someone through that process and then also bring in the transformational breath, because that allows us to integrate it on the cellular level, and the grief process allows us to integrate it on the heart level, on the conscious level, by taking responsibility for where they are and what they need to say. And then we say goodbye to that pain so that we can remember relationships, we can move on without it leading to stuckness or blockages or debilitating pain. So I have now done over 45 relationships with that process. I did old jobs so that I could leave it. I've done my house, I've done my body, I did sugar, I did God, I've done all my family, all my siblings, my children, because otherwise we are incomplete and our heart is
mm,
incomplete.
mm,
And every time we complete a relationship, we free ourselves to another extent. And so that's what it's helped me do. But also what it's helped me do as far as breath work is understand that grievers are not broken, right? They know what they need. They just need to be listened to with dignity and respect. And so as a trainer, it's important that I teach people, how do we listen to someone who's sharing their heart, who is sharing their grief? They just need to be heard. So if anybody watches this, my advice, my suggestion is, everybody says, what do you say to somebody who's just lost somebody, or somebody who's experienced the loss of a job or anything? You say, tell me what happened. What happened?
mm,
Not, "Oh,
mm,
I'm so sorry, you'll get over it,"
mm,
change the subject and all that stuff. You say, "What happened?" Because when they get to share their heart, then they know the next steps intellectually to move on. But we can't just be told to move on until our heart is heard. It's kind of
mm,
like we can't be told to forgive until we share what our experience was like and we allow our heart to be heard. Then we can forgive.
Mm.
So it's a very intricate program. But after I went through that and I went to training and I was working with that, I said, this is so amazing that it needs to be done with the breath work as well, because we're going to get to the deeper cellular level with the breath work too. And then after that, after you open your heart and after you've allowed your heart to pour out in writing and communication, what do I do with this open heart? Right? Oh, I'm just going to open you right up and then send you out into life. And so, no, now I bring in our let, listen, and love technique, which helps people learn to navigate their emotional triggers. How do I go out into life and learn how to, with my breath, with awareness, navigate my upsets in life, and also while taking my heart with me,
Mm.
right? How
Mm.
can I live life from my open heart and feel completely safe and confident? And we teach people how to do that. And so it's a 3-step, my Breathing Beyond Grief program. I do it in 6 weeks with people. So if anybody's doing it on a one-on-one, we do it in 6 weeks. We can do it over in an intensive and a weekend. We can do it, sometimes I do it in private retreat, but it's those 3 techniques. So it's the breath work, it's the writing and communication, and it's the emotional navigation. So it's been really my life's work, really. It's actually been my journey, because that was my journey through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's two things that kind of resonate with me is that one is the sentence, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood," which has
Mm,
always interested me and intrigued me because when I went through the different breathing sessions that we do with our training, and I went through the birth, the breathing, the birth session, and I've been through it, I don't know, 7, 8 times, and I noticed
mm,
that at each time I was kind of reprogramming my childhood, basically.
mm.
So it made me think of this sentence of how we are able to be almost creators not only of our future or our present, but also creators of our past, where we can
Mm.
re-look at, and as you said earlier, you can actually start to see that even with an alcoholic father, there were things that I would still keep.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would not be where I am without him, without his dysfunction, to see my own dysfunction,
Mm,
without his
mm,
white glove treatment, without his
mm,
perfectionism, without his hardcore upbringing.
mm.
And he was German, but I love my dad so much, and my mom. And but I could not have said that without allowing my experience of my life to be heard. So that's
Mm,
why I love the
mm.
grief work too, because you know, the breath work can really get to a lot of that grief. But at some point, I believe in our journey, we need to say what we need to say.
Yeah,
You know, we need to be heard. We need to be heard. And that's
yeah,
why it being witnessed is so crucial. And otherwise, our relationships are incomplete. And so, we've got lots of incompleteness in our life. And a lot of people don't realize that everyone's grieving, because it's not just about death. Grief occurs. Grief is our normal and natural reaction and response to loss, and that's not the problem. It's the unresolved grief. And that happens, and we experience grief when any normal pattern of behavior changes in our life. So anytime we have a change in life, we experience the loss of the way things used to be. And very few people are told, you need to say goodbye to your house. You need to say goodbye to your friends. What do we hear? You'll make new friends. Oh, dad's got a
mm,
better job.
mm,
You'll
mm,
love your new
mm,
house. Look at your new room,
mm,
right?
mm,
We'll get you a new dog. You can even name it the same, right?
mm.
And so we only learn how to acquire things. We don't learn how to lose things. And life is impermanence. Life is all about change. And we have not been taught how to navigate change. And it's so easy once we're taught. And um it's just that we need to be listened to with dignity and respect. So it's like, say goodbye to your room, say goodbye to your friends. And as I age and I'm in menopause right now, you know, I'm saying goodbye to my old body. I'm saying goodbye to things I can't do anymore. So aging is a huge loss. Retirement is a huge loss. Losing a job, being raised in an alcoholic home, because I lost my childhood. I didn't get to have a childhood. So that's a whole separate thing. Getting married is a loss because it's a loss of our individuality. Having children is a loss because it's a loss of our freedom. We're now responsible for another human being for the rest of our life. And so most people don't understand that those are grief events. And then when we go through grief events, if we don't allow our heart to be heard, if we don't allow our emotions, then what happens is back to the breath work, we stuff it and our pressure cooker gets full,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And
mm.
then all of a sudden, we're not present. So we may have a lot of accidents, illnesses, things like that. What I call short-term energy relieving behaviors. Our short-term relief comes into play then, right? And that ties into what we understand from the presence process that, stuck energy creates heat. And that heat fills our pressure cooker up. And so it's all intertwined. It's a beautiful, beautiful dance of the human being.
And
Yeah.
one of the things, listening to you speak about grief and how it can be, you know, largely resolved by just being able to listen to it and to be able to express it. But how important do you think it is to establish a breathing habit as such? I mean, we find in our seminars and especially in our professional training is that this is the one thing that we really need to put in place for those who are really interested in the breath work is habit. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I think is most efficient about Michael Brown and the presence process is that at the end of 10 weeks, you've got a habit, you've got a breathing
Mhm.
habit. So how important do you
Mhm.
think it is to have that, to have this habit of breathing?
I think it's absolutely crucial. I think it is the most crucial thing of anything we ever do because it's our connection to our source energy. It is our connection to our life force. It is our energy in our body. It is connection to our soul. It is grounding, and it gets us into that present moment. Otherwise, we are in our mind. We are in the future or the past, and we are being tossed around by our thoughts and our limiting beliefs. But when we come in and we work with our breath every day, we're going to connect, and then we're going to connect again, and we're going to connect again, right? And we're going to come into that present moment where everything exists, where all solutions live in the present moment. So I believe that a breath practice every day and a breath habit is crucial for us staying connected so that we can choose the direction we're going to go in life, right? We can be empowered. Where do I want to go? Otherwise, we're going to get tossed around. We're going to get tossed around by our past fears, our past conditioning. And so, but I will tell you, you can do 2 minutes, 5 minutes of breath, and it's going to settle the nervous system, right? So the breath practice itself is gonna work on everything. It's gonna work on your physical, it's gonna work on your nervous system, it's gonna get you embodied, it's gonna calm your nervous system down. So, we hear dysregulated all the time now, right? Well, in this life that we're living in, we're all commonly, very oftenly dysregulated. So a breath practice can get you regulated. It's gonna tell your brain, well, if I need those chemicals that are gonna create relaxation in my body. And so it's so crucial on the physical level, on the mental level, on the emotional level, and on the spiritual level. And to me, it's coming home to our soul is key because our soul knew what it signed up for in this lifetime. So we better get on board. And a breath practice is what does that every day.
Yeah, and
Now,
that's one of the things.
an
Go
extended breath
ahead.
practice, I mean, that's, up to you how long you want to do your breath sessions,
Mm,
but at
mm,
least
mm.
having a daily practice of maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes daily, maybe along with the meditation is crucial for just opening up the body, opening up your breath, creating energy, connection, and allowing anything that's emotionally here tagging along with you just to kind of
Space. Yeah, yeah.
release and, yeah, give yourself some space so you have a little bit more clarity.
And
Crucial.
just just going back to what you were saying about connection with your life energy or your soul, this spiritual dimension that personally I really appreciate in transformational breath as it being central to the teaching, but at the same time relatively, I would say, relaxed in the way it's taught and the way it's talked
Mhm.
about. But nevertheless, it's central. It's central in the invocations. It's central in the way that we teach facilitators to work. So, what would you say about this spiritual dimension and the difficulties sometimes? In France, if you mention the word God in
Mhm.
certain environments, people scream, and get very upset. So,
Right.
you know, how do you deal with that? You're in California, so maybe it's probably a bit more laid back in terms of how you can talk about spirituality. But do you encounter resistance to that or difficulties for that particular dimension?
Yes, sometimes I do. Being raised as a Christian, um, and then I left the church and studied lots of different religions. That has helped me a lot, but I do encounter some resistance to the word God. It seems to be a trigger word for many people. But to me, really, Paul, it's love.
Mm,
It's love.
mm,
It's love. It's acceptance. Um, it's presence. It's
mm.
presence. I mean, I've done the presence process not as many times as you have, but I'm on my 15th time. I'm on my 15th time, so I'm kind of as crazy as you are. Um,
Absolutely. I admit
but
that it's totally crazy, but I was
but
told by Michael Brown himself to stop, and I said, I'm not stopping. And then just recently he said, you were right. You were right to continue because you've got to listen to
yeah,
you. You're the master. You're the
yeah,
one who
yeah.
knows.
Well, and in essence, it becomes the way we live our life, right? I
Totally,
mean, it
totally.
becomes a practice, and then the way we see the world, that just becomes the way we we roll, in life. But as far back to the spiritual component of transformational breath, to me, it's deep connection to your soul, to your source, to love. And I believe, I mean, we all breathe. Everyone on the planet, every living thing breathes. And that's what we have in common. And so wherever the breath can take you in that spiritual time, it's going to take you to what is core and central for you. And I always just help people understand that it's not about a belief in a religion or a word or anything. Allow the breath to take you into presence,
Mm, mm.
into present moment, and allow that to unfold for you to get to know your soul. So, yeah, and again, just like we talked about creating a safe container, I meet people where they are. I always ask, how do you connect? How do you connect with your soul? And then based on their answers, that's how I meet them because, we're all one. We all breathe. We all breathe. All life breathes together. And so if we don't even have to mention the spiritual level if we don't want to, I'm going to meet them where they feel most comfortable because again, that comes back to creating the container that they feel safest in. Yeah.
And another thing that strikes me talking to you, and this is something that we have to deal with as well a lot in our trainings, is how much of it is about you and how much of it is about the others. How much are you teaching others and how much are you teaching yourself, or how much are you
Mm.
learning or teaching? And sometimes that frontier, for me at least, I would say even more so recently, has become much more, or at least for me, that I'm going into a learning experience, not a teaching experience. And I'm
Absolutely.
going into something that I want more connection from this seminar in which I am the so-called teacher or whatever,
Mhm.
but I want to learn more. I don't
Mhm.
want to teach more.
Right. Right. Well, I believe that it's just kind of a pool of souls that have so much to offer everyone.
Mm,
And I always tell everybody, I'm not the end all be all. I am not
Mm,
the expert. I'm just maybe a little bit further on the journey than you in
mm,
this particular
mm,
modality. I
mm,
said, but, and we always kind of come together in intention that it's a giving and it's a receiving, and that there is unlimited potential for new things to come through. That's another thing I love about Judith. She's always said that breath work is an ever evolving modality, and she welcomes new things to come in. I remember specifically her saying that,
mm.
hey, if you get an idea or if you get this hit, then bring it to me. Let's go. Let's see, let's work it to see if it has any merit. And that's how every training is. It's like a beautiful gathering of souls. And what's everybody going to bring to the table? But what we also learn in training is that, and in the presence process, is that everything and everyone is our mirror. And so you're going to get the clients that are going to mirror back to you your issues, your things that need to be worked on. And I'll tell you, I tell people if they're going to go from the essentials course and they say, well, I don't really want to be a facilitator. I said, well, that doesn't matter. You can go to the facilitation training and have no intention of facilitating anyone, but I will tell you, if you want to go deeper with the work than the essentials course, then you go to that facilitation training, because I will tell you, once you start seeing the breath in someone else, you're going to start seeing yourself, and you start getting hands on in that, and you're going to be faced with your own inadequacies. And
Totally,
that is the battleground. That is the place. That is
totally.
the playground, the sandbox that you go, look at that kid, look at that fear that just came up when I was working with somebody. Oh my gosh, look at that need to be loved or appreciated. Where'd that come from? You really want to go deep into your psyche, and you really want to start working that stuff, and scooping that oil off the top of that jar of water. um,
Totally, totally.
then you get hands on with somebody, and that has been the greatest thing for me,
Yeah, I
is the
totally
growth
agree.
in
Yeah,
intuition, the growth,
yeah,
the growth in my consciousness and evolution in that way, and also my intuition.
yeah,
So when you start working with the breath, you start opening up to trusting your guidance like no other, because you
yeah.
have to.
You have to.
You
There's
have
no
to.
alternative. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And
I mean,
and
that's
the
why I want people to go through. It's like, yeah, because don't you want to connect deeper with your intuition? So that, I mean, it's exciting. It's super exciting. I get
and
excited about it right now.
yeah, I mean it's but the what what seems to really hit me hard is the idea that people think about personal development or about progress in their own, even in their own spirituality or whatever, as being a kind of personal affair. It's them with
Mm,
them, or maybe them with God or whatever. But what I think that I've discovered very much so in the fact that you're looking after other people or facilitating other people, there seems to be a kind of threshold where your own personal development, if it's just centered on you, you can't really get much further. It's almost like you've got
mhm.
to start looking outside of yourself and dealing with
Yep,
other people, dealing with those mirrors, as you put it,
yep,
because that's the way that you will accelerate your own learning for yourself. So it's
right,
almost like,
right.
it's the facilitation part of transformational breath is almost like an accelerated personal learning journey where you're going
It's
to go through all those themes that are in your life that you can't see, or that you don't, that aren't visible to
yeah.
you.
Yep, that's what I have a saying here. It's like, "Oh, there I am." We always go, "Oh, there
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am."
yeah, yeah, totally,
Gentleness, always gentleness and non-judgment, but, "Oh,
totally,
there I am. Oh, there I am." I love
totally.
it. And that's the way to be. And I believe that right now, today, into 2025, that we're all being called to come back to connection to one another. And you know, and to really just come home to connection. We've been quite isolated. COVID did that too, but I mean, even in sharing our feelings and everything. I'm seeing a lot of shift in that lately. The people are ready to kind of come out of hiding and ready to be their authentic self a little bit more and be vulnerable, and be vulnerable. And that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons with Breathing Beyond Grief that I teach all the time. It's like, we can lay down and breathe all day long and we can have amazing sessions all day long, but there's gonna come a point when we need to take responsibility for our heart, and we need to take responsibility for our part in relationships that are continuing to rear their ugly heads, right? And it's when I see people start to take responsibility for their life and their
That it
choices
shifts. Yeah.
that it shifts, right? And then they can start taking more responsibility as they go out in their 24/7 life and see how life is happening for them. So then, can I use the let, listen, and love, or can I use those techniques from the
Mm,
presence process
mm.
to navigate my life from an empowered place? But yeah, so it's kind of that process. But that's exactly it. We have to get out into life and start seeing that life is happening for me to feel empowered, that this isn't just a random act that's happening to me. This is for my growth, right? And so how can I use this to further my own evolution and stop those recurring patterns from happening all the time? So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Um, just to kind of finish off, just
Sure.
thinking about the future. I mean, you mentioned earlier the fact that there seems to be more and more people coming forward and wanting to maybe get more in touch with themselves, or maybe to come home, as it were. But I also see in transformational breath that it becomes, well, that's my personal impression anyway, that it's becoming more demanding. The actual seminars themselves, the 4As, the 4Bs, I feel the level is going up. The people that are coming in seem to be already that much more committed, that much more
Mm,
ready, that much more equipped. That's my
mm.
personal impression. I was just wondering whether you have the same experience, or whether what have you noticed in terms of the evolution of transformational breath, or the evolution of training? Is it getting more difficult? I mean, what I find personally is that every single time it demands of me an act of faith.
Mm.
I mean, I was expecting, to be honest, an armchair at some point where I could kind of sit back and relax and take it easy, and the trainings would do
No,
themselves. And no, it didn't
no.
quite work out that way. And it seems as if every
Mm-mm,
single time it's demanding, and
mm-hmm,
it
mm-hmm,
demands particularly an act of faith. That's the way I kind
mm-hmm,
of translate it in my own mind and heart. That
mm-hmm.
it's the path seems to be an uphill one. That's my impression.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
do
I,
do
I
do you
I
resonate with
agree.
that? Or
Well, yes, I do. I do. And I feel we're all being called to that faith, that act of faith, and if you don't even want to go faith, but that trusting in the unknown,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
which
got
is
to
what it is.
trust
Yeah,
the unknown
yeah,
more and more and more. And how do you trust the unknown? You come back to your breath. You
yeah.
come back to
That's true.
presence. That's
That's true.
that's
That's
where
true.
the
Yeah,
solutions are,
always
right? It's
are.
not in
Yeah.
what we know, it's not in what we do, but it's just showing up. And when we just are willing to show up, then we will be given the tools we need in the present moment that we need them, and not a minute before and not a minute after. So you better be very present, right? My spiritual teacher used to always say, well, the Holy Spirit doesn't show up until the present moment. So what are y'all afraid? You're going to go into this, you know, this experience that you're nervous about. You're going to be afraid, 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 afraid. And only at that moment will spirit show up for you, because there's only the now. So we have to live in the now. But that I do find that it is it is calling for a deep amount of growth for absolutely everyone, including us as senior trainers. Um, I feel like it's a bit more imminent the soul growth right now. People are feeling the urge. So I think the people who are coming to our programs are people who are like, I got to do this. The time is now. I don't have time to, muck about with my stuff anymore. Like it's kind of time to decide which side of the fence do I want to be on, right? Do I want to start feeling better or do I want to get in the fray? And I think that's happening all over the world. And we're kind of being called to choose the train we're going to get on, right? And so the people who are choosing the train of evolution, healing, soul growth, and moving towards that and wanting to be a part of the growth of humanity, they're coming with a different fervor, I
Mm,
feel.
mm,
And so therefore, it's demanding more of us as senior trainers to hold that level of professionalism and that
mm,
level of guidance and that level of consciousness. So I've been feeling it's been even more important for me to stay on my work, to
mm,
stay in
mm.
my breath practice and to stay doing my work so that I can be fully present and not get involved in all of the politics that are happening and all of the
Totally,
yucky stuff. I mean,
totally.
it's so divisive now that it to me in my heart, I'm very open-hearted person and I'm a fierce mother warrior of the heart for people. And it's been so hard for me to see what has been happening in many places. So it gives me more fervor. I come to my work with this is important. I have a reverence for this work like no other. Well, the only thing I have more reverence for is someone's heart. Truly, truly. I mean, it makes me tear up because when I see somebody be vulnerable, it brings me to the holy instant. It brings me to that present moment where there is no separation between the two of us. And that is what I want to create in this world. And I have been given the the privilege to lead people into this work. And I don't take it lightly. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful to Judith Kravitz for bringing this work to me. I am so grateful to God, to spirit, to my presence within me, my soul that guided me here. It's such a blessing and it's such an honor. And that's how I come to, and that's how mostly everybody comes in transformational breath. They're going to meet you in that reverence for your heart. And you can go to any training anywhere around the world and you receive that same loving care. And that's why I love transformational breath. That's why I've been with it since 2008. I don't even know how many years that is, but there's been some times when I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I come back to it and I go, well, I guess somebody else out there still wants me to do it because I'm still here. So
Thank you so much,
that's,
Jen.
you're welcome,
It's
Paul.
just been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure to talk to you and to really hear where you're at and what you're doing and all the love and the reverence you bring to this work. Thank you so much. Uh,
You're welcome. Thank you, Paul, for having me. And it's always so good to connect with you again.
yeah, yeah.